Hello everybody, and welcome to the first of hopefully many videos on the Argent Saga trading card game, which is set to be released on August 1st, so about 2 weeks from now. For those who aren't familiar, Argent Saga is a card game that was created by Mr. Jeff Jones, who you can see right here. He is a former Yu-Gi-Oh player. I don't know if he still plays. I would assume not as much because he's developing this card game. But he was a prominent Yu-Gi-Oh player who had a lot of innovative deck ideas, very creative, did very well with them. So he's one of the more popular Yu-Gi-Oh players, ever for that card game. But now he developed this one. So he teamed up with ARG, Jim McMahon, who's the owner there, and they developed this game. So their very first set comes out August 1st. Sorry, I almost said August. August 1st, and it's called Betrayal. And the full spoiler is out. So I just wanted to make some videos and go over all of the cards that are going to be in the set. So this first video is going to be about the dark element. As you can see, there's 5 elements. It's kind of over the A there of Argent. It looks like a tower. So we're going to be going over those cards today. If you guys don't know anything about Argent Saga, I suggest that you go to Argent Saga's YouTube video. They have, I think, 16 or 17 videos on how to play the game, and it's very simple. They're like 2 minutes long. So I highly suggest you go over and look at those before you come over here. I will also link in the description the spoilers for the intro decks, where you can get champions and things like that. So once you see the intro decks over at Argent Saga's YouTube, that comment will make a little more sense. And then you can come back over here and look at the dark cards that I'm going to be discussing today. So I'm going to show you what they are, and I'm also going to give my opinion on them. So I really hope you like the video, and let's get to it. So our first card is Blood Sacrifice. It says, as an additional cost to play this card, sacrifice a dark unit. Discard 1 random card from your opponent's hand. In my opinion, this card is not very good for a cost of 2 to also sacrifice a dark unit and then only randomly discard a card from your opponent's hand. It does not seem like a very good option. So next up is Bloodlight Maniac. It's got a cost of 2 and it has an arrive ability that says both players discard 1 random card from their hands. So at first this card doesn't seem very good, but upon further investigation within the element, it does have some synergy with cards that want to be in the grave, or cards that benefit with more cards in the grave, which we'll see a little later. So this card does have potential. So next up is Cruel Accord. It's got a cost of 3. Spell that says discard 1 card from your hand, then your opponent discards 2 cards from their hand. This card I don't think is very good, mainly because it gives your opponent the option on what they discard. So if you were discarding a card and then looking at your opponent's hand and discarding those 2 cards, maybe it would have some potential. But right now, for a cost of 3, without being instacast, I don't think it's a very good option. We have Cry of Madness. It says discard 2 random cards from your opponent's hand for a cost of 5. I think this is way too expensive just for 2 random cards out of your opponent's hand. I don't think it's that good of a card. We have Delayed Poison. It's a cost of 1. It's an augment that says equip to a target unit. At the start of your next turn, destroy the equipped unit. For me, a cost of 1 to out any card your opponent has doesn't seem very bad. Now the only question is, are you going to have enough time to have that to let that effect take place? Are you going to have that turn to allow that? So I guess only time will tell on the value of this card. So next we have Enveloped in Darkness. It's a 1-cost spell that has instacast, and it says target attacking unit gets -1000 this turn. Very simple card, very straightforward. I think early game this card is pretty decent. So a solid common here. So next is Gloom Oligarch. It's a 4-cost unit with 2500 power, and it says sacrifice a unit, choose one. Target unit gets plus 1000 this turn, or target unit gets minus 1000 this turn. I think this card's really good. The fact that you can get multiple uses out of your unit, let's say you attack with the unit and then tap it, you can then sacrifice that unit with this card to give another unit that you have 1000 this turn. Or you can target one of your opponent's units that could possibly be blocking and subtract 1000 power. So I think this card has a lot of uses, and I think it's going to be one of the cards that Dark puts in their deck as an option. So next is Hidden Laboratory. It's a 2-cost augment that has an arrive ability that allows you to place 3 counters on your champion if it's Hoenna. So Hoenna, whenever it has 3 counters on it, it can produce a 1500 Golem token. So it automatically gives you an option to go into that Golem token. So that's good. And then it also has an exhaust ability where you can sacrifice a Golem unit and draw a card. So again, this card multi-purpose. So I think it could find its way into a Dark deck. Maybe not now, but in the future maybe, or maybe now. I don't know. The 3 counters automatically is good, and then also being able to sacrifice Golem unit to draw a card whenever it might be destroyed anyway seems pretty good. And the last of the commons for Dark is Poisonous Strike. It's a cost of 3 spell with instacast, and it says target attacking or blocking unit gets minus 2000 this turn, then your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. This card I think is pretty good to give your opponent's attacking or blocking unit minus 2000 and then they need to discard a card from their hand is a lot of value. So I think this card's pretty good for a common. So now we're going to get into the rares. So the first Dark rare that we have is Soul Transfer. It's a 4-cost spell that says destroy target unit, and if you do, you can put into play a unit from your discard zone whose cost is lower than the destroyed unit. This card is pretty good. Dark has a lot of good arrive units, so I see this card fitting in well to the existing card pool. Next up is Pewter Gargoyle. It's a cost of 2 with 500 power, and it says if this card is in your discard zone, when a card is discarded from your opponent's hand by your effect, you can put this card into play. So this card is pretty neat, actually. It keeps reviving itself whenever your opponent discards a card from their hand, and that's pretty much the whole purpose of the Dark deck. So this could come back a lot to use for additional costs that are needed on cards. So this card has a lot of potential. So next is Brain White Beam. It's a cost of 3 spell that says target a unit. If its power is 2000 or less, exhaust it and take control of it. If its power is more than 2000, give it minus 2000 this turn. This is the one card that I really don't have any opinion on just because I don't really know if it's good or not. So maybe in the comments section below you let me know maybe some interactions that I'm not seeing with this or some potential. That'd be great. So next is Gargoyle Mimic. It has a cost of 3 with 1500 power. It has a ruined ability, so whenever the unit is destroyed or sacrificed, it gets this effect. It says target 1 dark unit in your discard zone with ruined and apply its ruined effect. So this card has a lot of potential, not only now, but also in the future. So Dark has a lot of good ruined abilities, so I could see this being a possible addition to any Dark deck. So the next rare isn't necessarily a Dark rare, but if you have a Dark Spirit, you can use this special shard, which all of the elements got one of these in this new set. So this is the special shard if your spirit is dark. So it says if your spirit isn't dark, this card comes into play exhausted. You can exhaust one, produce one, like the basic shards, or it has a second ability where you can exhaust and send the top card of your deck to the discard zone. So I think if you play Mono Dark, this is an instant add, obviously, because why not? It gives you options. It synergizes with the deck because you want to have things in the graveyard, like that Gargoyle card that we just discussed, where if it's in the graveyard and you discard something out of your opponent's hand, it comes back. So I think this card gives a lot of versatility to your shards, and if you're running a Mono Dark, there's no reason not to play it. And you can run up to 3 special shards. So now we're going to talk about the super rares. So the first super rare is Debilitating Miasma, which I think I pronounced correctly, but I hope I did. Anyway, it's a spell with a cost of 4 that has instacast, and it says up to 2 target units get minus 2,000 this turn. I think this card is really good. Being able to possibly destroy 2 units for the cost of 4 is a lot of value, and I think it's going to be an instant addition in any dark deck. So next up is Gigith, the first Gargoyle. He has a cost of 5 with 3,000 power and has an Arrive ability that says put a protection counter on another target unit you control. And essentially that protection counter, if that card would be destroyed, you can remove the protection counter. He also says if this card is in your discard zone, you can discard dark units from your hand whose combined cost equals 10 and then put it into play. So this card is up in the air for me. I don't really think the Arrive ability is that good, just because there's a lot of cards that bounce cards instead of destroying them. So I think the protection counter is easy to get around. Although the second effect of him being in the discard zone, where you can just discard dark units from your hand to summon him for free, seems kind of good, especially whenever you want more cards in your graveyard for dark. So this card could go either way. So the last super rare is actually an Omega Magic. Now, Omega Magics are something that all elements got in this set. They're basically spells that get stronger with the less amount of towers that you have. So the longer the game goes, the more powerful they get. So Darks is Omega Magic Yami. It has a cost of 2, and it has instacast. And it says choose one, or if you have 2 or less towers remaining, which is what I was just talking about, so the longer the game goes on, you can choose both of these effects. So a target unit gets minus 1,000, and then you can return a target unit with cost 3 or less from your discard zone to the field. So obviously this card's pretty good. A cost of 2, target unit gets minus 1,000. It's not fantastic, but the fact that later on in the game you can do 2 things just for a cost of 2 is a lot of value. I think this card is really good. So now we're into the Argent rares, and I just noticed I haven't been explaining this, but at the very bottom of the card, right here, you can see this symbol. So obviously this one is for Argent rare, which is the highest rarity in Argent Saga as of now. In the rules, there is something that talks about secret rares, but we haven't seen any of those leaked currently. So Argent rares are the highest rarity. What we were just looking at were the super rares, which had a yellow diamond-like. The rares have a square, and then the commons are just circles. So, sorry for not explaining that, but now you know. So the first Argent rare that Dark has, and each element has 2. Dark's first one is Philosopher's Stone. It has a cost of 2, and it's an augment. It also says Legendary Stone, so another thing that you need to pay attention with the Argent rares is currently all Argent rares have this Legendary title underneath them. So this one is Legendary Stone. You can only play one of that card in your deck. So that means not just one legendary card, but one legendary stone card, which is Philosopher's Stone in this instance. Now, it's unclear if an additional legendary stone is going to be released in future sets, but if that's the case, you will only be able to use one legendary stone. That's the way I understand it. So Philosopher's Stone is a cost of 2. It's an augment, legendary stone, and it has an arrive ability that says expel all golem units from your discard zone and place 1 counter on this card for each. So right there, this plays into what the Dark deck does, which is having a lot of units in your graveyard to use as resources, and this is obviously one of them. So you put counters on this with the arrive ability by expelling all golem units in your discard zone. So expelling is pretty much banished, not really usable for the rest of the game. So you have the counters, and then it has an exhaust ability that says remove any number of counters from this card, search your deck for a dark unit with cost equal to the number of counters removed and put it into play. At the end of the turn, if this card has no counters, sacrifice it. So this card is crazy good. It's really good. It searches for any dark unit in your deck. So obviously you can only play one, and you play it. This card is amazing. I really like it. I think it's one of the best Argent rares in the set. So to finish up Dark, we have the second Argent rare. His name is Patriarch of the Golems. He costs 7 with 5,000 power, and he has the Destroyer ability, which means whenever he attacks a tower, it actually attacks 2 towers, so this is a very devastating ability. He also says this card costs 1 less to play for each card discarded from your opponent's hand by your effects this turn, so you can reduce his cost even more with your Spirit and your spells, or some of your units discard cards from your opponent's hand. So potentially this card could even cost 4 or 5 to come out, so he could come out pretty early. And then lastly, he has discard 1 golem unit from your hand, and then a target unit gets minus X 1,000, where X equals the discarded card's cost. So if you discard, a 5 cost, that's 5,000 to a target unit, which is nuts. And it's not once per turn. So this card is also really good, and why it's an Argent rare. So I think because you can only play 1, I think you obviously play 1. So yeah, that wraps up Dark.